Who are the Mario Kart 8 developers? How has the team changed in recent years? And what else are they working on? Could we see another Nintendogs, another ARMS, or another original title? And what does this all mean for the next Nintendo console? Don your helmet, fasten your seatbelt as we get set for another Nintendo Forecast deep dive. So for most of its history, and with only occasional help from outside studios such as Retro Studios' contribution to Mario Kart 7, the Mario Kart franchise has been run out of the Nintendo Kyoto offices. Under the current organisational structure, Nintendo's entertainment planning and development team is split in multiple ways, and the team most closely associated with Mario Kart is EPD 9. Although for much of Mario Kart's history, the lead producer was original game director Hideki Kono, in the last 10 years, Kono-san has moved into the mobile space more, although still receiving credits for his producer role as recently as Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Pass. This paved the way for Kosuke Yabuki to take on the producing role of EPD 9, a meteoric rise by Nintendo standards given that he was in his mid-30s with his directorial debut, Mario Kart 7, releasing when he was just 31. Yabuki-san evidently had a good relationship with people across the games industry, asking Masahiro Sakurai personally to incorporate Min-Min into the Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Fighter Pass. Indeed, I almost detect a trace of Sakurai-san's famous perfectionism in his reply to Nintendo Life's question on balancing back in 2014. Yabuki-san said, "Adjusting only a specific part of the game would break the overall balance. In developing Mario Kart 8, we have recreated and recombined all game elements and adjusted everything over the course of thousands of tests to aim for the perfect balance." Perhaps to complement Yabuki-san's youth, Yasuyuki Oyagi has the unusual position of co-producer on recent titles. Although in the American film pantheon a co-producer is junior to a producer, the positioning of the credits suggests that Oyagi-san has the more senior position, and his longer tenure at Nintendo suggests that he is the balancing force keeping the younger Mario Kart team from going too far off-road. Nevertheless, while Mario Kart is by far the biggest and most famous franchise they handle, it is not their only one. In 2005 and 2011 they released titles in the Nintendogs series, and in 2017 they created the original fighting titles ARMS. This roughly 6-year cycle of creating non-Mario Kart projects sits alongside a roughly 3-year dev cycle on Mario Kart, with new games in 2005, 2008, 2011, 2014, plus Mario Kart 8 Deluxe in 2017. Since then, there have been a number of Mario Kart projects, with 2019's Mario Kart Tour partnered with Nintendo's mobile team EPD 11 and Mobile Systems collaborator DNA. Then there was also 2020's Mario Kart Live Home Circuit, developed mainly by Velan, and the Booster Course DLC pass by the core team. You can bet that they also had some tangential involvement, at least in the development of the Universal Theme Park Mario Kart ride as well. Still, while this is a lot of activity, the last wholly developed original retail title they released was ARMS in 2017, and it seems plausible that we could expect both a new Mario Kart title and another EPD 9 title within a year or two of the new console releasing. But do they have the capacity for this? Regular viewers of this channel will have seen my previous videos on EPD 10, the Pikmin and Super Mario Bros. Team, and EPD 5, the Splatoon and Animal Crossing devs, and Fire Emblem, Paper Mario and WarioWare Supremo's Intelligent Systems. In these, I analysed the credits from these companies' recent games to see who the key developers were and how the teams were constructed. For EPD 9, given their lack of recent titles, I've gone back a good deal further to 2011. This has the disadvantage that it takes us back to before Nintendo's restructure in 2015, but nevertheless, I think it's important to see what has happened to the Nintendogs development staff given the strong possibility of EPD 9 releasing an additional non-Mario Kart title as well, and the fact that the Nintendogs franchise is very successful and iconic for Nintendo and has yet to receive a new entry for a very long time. So the first thing that becomes apparent very quickly is that even though both games were launched in the same year, both games for the launch window of the 3DS, Mario Kart 7 and Nintendogs, this is not the same sort of situation that we saw with Animal Crossing New Horizons and Splatoon 3, where the crossover was in certain departments and not with the core development staff. Animal Crossing and Splatoon had, at heart, completely different staffs, but these two teams, the Mario Kart and Nintendogs team, were joined at the hip, and I can only assume that work on Mario Kart 7 and Nintendogs and Cats either took place concurrently or that one was completed for a good amount of time before the other. I find it worth noting that for the launch of both the 3DS and Switch they pulled double duty and produced two games, and although development costs and time have increased as technology develops, I'm still going to call it a 50% chance here that the first 12 months of the new Switch system will see 2 titles release in which EPD9 have been, if not the only developers, at least heavily involved. Key split in personnel is reflected in the current dual leadership of the team. Kosuke Ibuki took on Mario Kart, Yasuyuki Oyagi took on Nintendogs and Cats, although both were supervised, of course, by Hideki Kono. There were separate planning teams. Mario Kart 7 had 5 on the planning team, but Takuma Toba, Hokwai Ng, and Mario Kart 7 director Kosuke Ibuki himself were all on the planning team for Nintendogs and Cats as well. Shintaro Jikamaru was a planner for Mario Kart 7, but on technical support for Nintendogs and Cats before taking the director's chair 6 years later for ARMS. In all, roughly half of the Nintendogs team worked on other projects alongside Nintendogs, and a good number of them appear to have ended up working with EPD4, the developers of Nintendo's more casual-focused titles, including 1-2-Switch, Labo, Ring Fit, and Switch Sports. This makes sense given Nintendogs' casual nature, and it seems to be unlikely that EPD9 will be solely responsible for reinstituting this franchise, though they may lend some of the development staff to the effort. On the other hand, this kind of project would be a natural fit for EPD4, as well as mobile developers EPD11, if the patent demonstrating a mobile phone-focused Nintendogs ever eventuates into an actual title. So now let's look forward to the 2014 to 2017 period. This was a tricky time for Nintendo internally, with the Wii U massively underperforming, the 3DS recovering but after a decidedly rocky start, and the Switch's success being deeply uncertain. It won't surprise you to learn, therefore, that the vast majority of ARM's development staff were shared with Mario Kart 8, and it seems likely that a fringe benefit of doing a straight-up port for their Switch Mario Kart outing was that they could take a punt on ARMS alongside it. Speaking to Eurogamer in 2017, Kensuke Ibuki actually explained about how ARMS came to be and how the team was selected. He said, "Within Nintendo, individual people or teams have their ideas, and also we kind of choose the prototypes that are best suited to a team's skills to work on them. An example of that being a lot of staff who worked on Mario Kart came over as a team to work on ARMS. Mario Kart 8 had such a large online element, and we knew that ARMS would have a large online element, so the understanding of online play would carry over." Initially spearheaded by Kosuke Ibuki alongside 2 others whose names are not identified, the game ended up with a trio of directors. This included Mario Kart 8 programmer Kenta Sato, character designer for Mario Kart 7 Masaki Ishikawa, and EPD9 mainstay Shintaro Jikamaru. If these 3 are the leading lights on the ARMS team, where are they now? Kenta Sato was one of the 2 programming leads on the Booster Course Pass, Masaki Ishikawa supervised Mario Kart Live Home Circuit, and Shintaro Jikamaru hasn't been credited on any games since ARMS. What strikes me is that while the Booster Course Pass would doubtless have proved a fairly labour-intensive project, it's still essentially porting a number of games from Mario Kart Tour while supervising Mario Kart Live Home Circuit, a game chiefly developed by Velan which released nearly 4 years ago, also doesn't suggest a full-time involvement from a very senior Nintendo figure. Meanwhile, it's possible that Jikamaru-san has left Nintendo, but there's been no recorded credit for him outside Nintendo either. This leaves 2 possibilities. One is that they were heavily involved in Mario Kart Tour, for which we cannot get certain credits. This is possible. While the Nintendo fandom wiki has done a valiant job of assembling a credits list from bits and pieces in interviews, there is no definite list of the people who worked on Mario Kart Tour, and so it's impossible to say for sure. The other possibility is that one or all of these are working on another title. This could be Mario Kart 9, or it could be another ARMS, or, of course, it could be something completely original. I'm not sure before looking at these credits I would have rated the chance for Return to ARMS. Personally, I think the game is absolutely great, if slightly underdeveloped, and the volleyball minigame is a bit of a pain. And with 2.72 million copies sold as of December 2022, it compares favourably sales-wise to other titles from 2017, including Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Min Min's appearance in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate proved that the game hasn't been completely forgotten, and it always seemed to me to be a real passion project from the team. With this in mind, I think there's a 30% chance that we will see another ARMS title by the end of 2026. Of course, the other near dead cert likelihood to release is the new Mario Kart. Based on the history of Mario Kart games being huge sellers, I'd give that a 90% chance to release within the new console's first year and a 70% chance to release within the new console's first 4 months. My only hesitation being if they decide they would rather prioritise a 3D Mario experience earlier in the console's life compared to Mario Kart. However, if it does happen, you can bet that there will be a substantial number of people working on it. Whereas Mario Kart 7 had to borrow a significant number of developers from Retro Studios, and the development of Mario Kart 8 meant that EPD 9 only had one game between 2011 and 2017, the Booster Course Pass alone has credits longer than the core Mario Kart 8 Deluxe title, which also had credits longer than the original Mario Kart 8. What is interesting is that the original game, Deluxe, and the Booster Course all have different directors. Kosuke Ibuki helmed the original title, while programming manager on the Booster Course, Yosuke Shiraiwa, took on Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. I think it's highly unlikely that Kosuke Ibuki will direct another title after being promoted to being a senior producer. And as Shiraiwa-san, while being the programming manager is clearly an important role, commensurate with his seniority, it could also be a title that would fit alongside developing the new Mario Kart as a director. The Booster Course co-directors include Miyuki Kimura, who has worked on every EPD 9 game since Mario Kart 8, but has no other credits, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe programmer Shun Otsugi, and programmer on both the previous Mario Karts, Miyuki Kimura. My expectation therefore is that these three were working on the Booster Course and getting experience in a more senior role while still keeping their hand in developing the next fully fledged Mario Kart title. The large size of the Booster Course credits also suggests that EPD 9 is not significantly larger than it was in 2017. Small wonder. We saw in my Splatoon and Animal Crossing video how the scope of that team has also ballooned, and even Animal Crossing New Horizons can't lay a glove on Mario Kart in terms of sales. But is it possible that we could see a brand new title from EPD 9 again, just as we saw in Nintendogs and ARMS? I think if this were to happen, it would come from the intersection with EPD 4. Although most of EPD's 4 titles are quite lightweight party titles, Ring Fit Adventure show that they are capable of doing a game that feels much more substantial, and in many respects ARMS feels spiritually closer to an EPD 4 title as it makes great use of the system's new features. Nintendo quite likes to have experimental, small titles that act as tech demos of new features, but players cannot live on 1-2-Switch alone. Nintendo Land had a bit more to it, ARMS had a bit more to it, and it seems to me that EPD 9's bigger focus on gameplay, and particularly the casual market space, makes them a very good candidate to develop either an original IP, perhaps one of those that Yabuki-san mentioned that were not developed in 2017, or a new gameplay style utilising characters from an existing IP in such a way that shows off the features of the new gaming system. In particular, Splatoon is a huge online hit, but if Nintendo wishes to keep developing that online infrastructure, and ARMS did not quite scratch the itch they were hoping for, an online game could be a very promising possibility. But how likely really is a new IP from such an in-demand set of developers? Let me take you back to that Kosuke Ibuki interview with Eurogamer. He said then, "Something that's a big consideration for us is that, in addition to supporting existing games with regular updates, we have to make new games. Working out the balance about how we do both of those things is a big consideration." Well, Mario Kart Tour, Mario Kart Live Home Circuit, and even the Booster Course Pass do count as new games after a fashion, but how new is new? He also later commented of ARMS that, in terms of producing that game, it's not the case that it was specifically let's make a fighting game as the first consideration. There were lots of different prototypes for online styles of games, and ARMS was one of those that got chosen in the end. With the timing, it was in tandem with the development of the Nintendo Switch. So for Nintendo Switch, we asked what kind of game could we make? And within those prototypes, ARMS got selected. There were other prototypes of other online-centric games. Those other prototypes, they weren't not chosen because they were bad ideas. Some of them had potential, so the prototypes that aren't used aren't discarded. They're still there as potential ideas for future games. Now, I don't think anyone will be surprised that Nintendo has a ton of prototypes lying around, but of course, while one reason for blocking a prototype's development is simply that it wasn't as compelling as ARMS, another could be that the technology was not yet ready. Either the game required a technological power or scope of staff that put it out of the reach of Nintendo in the dog days of the mid-2010s, or it required technology that was not ultimately incorporated into the Switch, perhaps double screen or stereoscopic 3D. We know from a Nintendo Live interview that Mario Kart Live was not one of these ideas, because it seems that Velan came to Nintendo to pitch this in 2017. I mean, I should clarify that the interview is open-ended enough that the original concept could have come out of Nintendo even if Velan were asked to develop it and pitch it, but there is nothing that suggests that this was the case necessarily. Still, it's been a long time since Nintendo created a truly new IP. There are some smaller titles, plus Ring of Adventure, and of course Princess Peach Showtime was a new spin on an old character, but where are the likes of Splatoon and ARMS? Even EPD 4 have focused mainly on adapting old games with Game Builder Garage, big cannibalization of their mechanics on Labo, and Switch Sports and Everyone Want to Switch being sequel titles. In this respect, Yabuki-san's comments also bear scrutiny. When it was pointed out that after the mid-2000s, which saw the rise of Animal Crossing and Pikmin, there seemed to be a long period without major new innovative titles, he observed, firstly, in that intervening period between Pikmin and Splatoon, there were some new IPs, like Tomodachi Life and Rhythm Paradise, for example. I don't think that gap was so large, but around the time that Splatoon was in its early development stages, it's true to say that among the younger generation of developers at Nintendo, that desire and that idea of creating something completely new, it was definitely there. On top of that, it's also a fact that Mr. Miyamoto, Mr. Iguchi, the creator of Animal Crossing series and general deputy manager, that Mr. Miyamoto, Mr. Iguchi, Mr. Takahashi and other senior figures very much supported us in that. You know, there's always lots of different prototypes being experimented with and considered. For those to turn into real games is a huge team effort that requires a lot of manpower and a lot of talent, and without the overall support of the company, you can't achieve it. I'm grateful for the fact that they didn't just say to me, now you've got to make the next Mario Kart. They allowed me to make ARMS, and personally, I'm very grateful for that opportunity. As much as Nintendo relies on its senior developers, Mr. Yabuki shows that it does entrust its younger staff with responsibility some of the time. And while the outside success of the Switch may have made them cautious, and naturally they have wanted to cash in on their established franchises over recent years, I think they also realise that they need to do something for the future. Now, that doesn't mean it needs to come through Kensuke Ibuki's team, but given the size of his team, his seniority among the younger generation of Nintendo developers, and their experience of popular titles, it seems at least a 30% likelihood that there will be a completely original IP produced by EPD 9, or at least in significant part by them, and releasing within the first 2 years of the next console's life cycle. For more like this video, check the playlist on screen, and if you have other companies or other development teams you would like to see me cover in depth in future videos, please let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I will see you again next time for another Nintendo Forecast.